Welcome to the Cabin Culture Podcast, where we spend a little more time diving deeper into all the fun parts of cabin culture. We like to think of this as both the material and imagined expressions of how cabin lovers, dwellers, builders, and designers wish to live a more simple and authentic life. On this episode, I'm chatting with Julie Shackett, the human behind the brand new A-frame called The Shack in Basye, Virginia. Since Julie just finished her build, I thought it would be fun to talk about the process, what she learned, any advice for others, and all the other good stuff while it's fresh on the top of her mind. Julie and I chatted one day before she underwent another surgery in her ongoing battle with stage 4 breast cancer. After our call, we set up a meal train to help with the recovery process, and you can find the link in our Instagram profile if you're interested in showing her a little love while she heals. In the meantime, on to our chat. And as always, thanks for joining us and being part of this community. Julie, full transparency, I know Julie because she's done several cabin consultations with me and just finished her build. So at the end of our last one, I was like, I really think this would be an interesting podcast. So I know a little bit about your story, but do you want to start by introducing yourself and just sharing a bit about your story for listeners who don't know you yet?
Sure. And some of this will be edited, right? Like this beginning part, or is this like... Okay.
We'll see. Sean is editing this. He's not on the call right now. So we'll rely on him to clean it up and make it sound good.
So I'm Julie Shackett. I just finished a build of The Shack at Basye, Virginia. Affectionately named after myself, being my last name is Shackett. Growing up, a lot of people did call me Shack Attack, that kind of stuff. So when I was thinking about the name for this property, The Shack seemed appropriate, although ironic because it is not a small property.
I was just going to say, I like the irony of it because it's not small and it's certainly not a shack, but the fact that it's your last name, it's a good mix. So folks, if they want to see it while they're listening to this, one, you can hop on YouTube where we'll post this and we might put visuals from it, but also tell them your Instagram so they can find it there and see what it looks like.
It's The Shack Basye, BA, so The Shack and then BASYE, Basye is the town of Virginia that it's located in.
Okay, perfect. Okay, finish telling me more about yourself.
Sure, yes. So I currently reside in the Washington, D.C. area. I've been here for about 8 years, and I work for an organization that protects our nation's public lands. So that's really fun and exciting and a cause that I am passionate about. And then in 2016, I was diagnosed with early stage breast cancer, had surgery, did treatments, going about living my life. And then in 2021, I found out that I was metastatic and that the cancer had moved to different parts of my body. So at that point, I was having surgery. I was recovering from that, going through treatments. And I was looking for a cabin to purchase in this area because it is about 2 hours from DC. And I was like, oh, I'll have a great place to go and just kind of hang out. And then I just could not find what I was looking for. And so when I got the diagnosis of technically it's stage 4 is what, it sounds terrible. And at stage 4, I could have a whole podcast about what that means because it does not mean that I'm going to be gone tomorrow. It does mean that I have to live with this for the rest of my life. And, it eventually will probably shorten my life, but I have a fighting chance here. But I was like, I'm not waiting on anything. I don't know when I'm going to not feel good. I don't know when I'm going to have to stop doing the things I like to do. So I went out with some friends. We always do we do a summer and a winter trip out to a cabin. And so we were out this area in Shenandoah County at a cabin, and I met up with a realtor, looked at some land, and that was January of 2022. And then I just closed on the cabin last Thursday. So a little like a year and some, a year and a half, I guess, almost. I ran into some legal issues up front that I can talk about too with the land that I purchased. But so I just decided to make my dreams happen and to make it all come true.
I feel like what really resonated with me when you first shared your story when we were talking is just this idea of like how the short-term rental market has like grown recently, and how a lot of people that I talk to, it is a way to enjoy retirement dreams or one day dreams in a more immediate fashion rather than waiting when, as you know better than most of us, like you never know what that timeline looks like. And so it gives us the ability to do that a bit sooner and do it more affordably by sharing it with other people.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And right now, because I have to unfortunately have another surgery in 2 days from right now. So where I had a whole timeline and plans of what I was going to do, that has kind of gone out the window, and I'm just figuring out. But I do think I'm actually going to go and enjoy it myself for a little bit. And it's been a long project. It's been a fun project. I have some great builders, but it's also been so stressful at times. Definitely more time, definitely more money. And so I really want to enjoy it before I start sharing it with other people. So I think I am going to go up to live up there for about 4 to 5 months. And then
Good.
it's right near Bryce Resort, ski resort. So any people in the DC area might know that. But so I figure I'll rent it out during ski season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, had it not been for your diagnosis, do you think you would have done this as like when you did it, or do you think you would have waited longer?
I would have waited. I think I would have kept looking. I mean, I just had this, it was 2021, right? So property prices were still high, or very high, interest rates were lower and all of those things. So I think I would have kept looking, and I had been out to this area. There were 3 things I will say that drove me to this area. The fact that it is 2 hours from DC, so pretty accessible. I do the trip a lot in in a day. It had the ability to hook up to public sewer and water, which
so helpful.
Like, do I want to do septic and well? Like, I don't know if I want to do this. And then also that in the resort, my knowledge is like 80% of the people, it is rentals. And so they weren't going to change the restrictions on who can rent and who can't if it's benefiting that much of the population up there. So, but I was just up there this weekend, and I joined the resort. I'm ready to kind of immerse myself into this life of relaxation a little bit more than being in DC.
Yeah.
And in addition to regular cancer treatments, I also work with a naturopathic doctor for a holistic approach. And one of our conversations, one of our first conversations, she's like, I don't think you realize how much your body absorbs stress just by living in a very stressful location, such as DC. The traffic, the politics, the people, all these things. And she's like, just for your own well-being, you might want to consider going somewhere else, and at least having a somewhere else to go. So I think that also, and then just I don't know. Anyone who knows me also knows that I'm a pretty when my mind's made up about something, I'm just gonna do it. So I'm not.
I can relate to that.
Yeah, I'm like, do I not? I think that's what actually drove me to look at your Instagram more and to learn about you more. It was just I'm like, okay, and I'm doing it by myself too, right? As a single female, and just kind of going for it and figuring things out as I go along, which is pretty cool, but also again stressful. Yeah.
It is cool and empowering, and also very hard. And I think that goes unnoticed sometimes, because most of the people that we see with cabins and living the cabin dreams, most, and not always, but are married couples who are dividing the work. And while I am very lucky to have Sean now, the first 4 years of my rental experience in cabin ownership, I was a single female. And we talked about this on the past episode with Karen. But that is it is a different beast. And I'm sure it's the same thing if you're a single male. I'm not saying it's necessarily a female thing, but just doing it alone on top of then working a full-time job that you have to work to pay all your bills, and then doing this by yourself on top of that, it's just a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely. And I think being a female actually does play into it a little bit. I think sometimes, especially out, I'm in the more rural community. I remember one of the contractors said to me, oh, this just seems like a woman's touch, and things like that was underlying tones. I know what he was saying, but I'm like, that doesn't always happen as much in DC. Still does, but out in more rural areas, that is still the mindset. And so I do think that maybe it's hey, I see this single female coming, she obviously has some money to be able to do a build. Like, and she doesn't probably know a ton about the inner workings of what goes on with a build. So can I get, is there some room for, trying to be a little sneaky? I will say I have what I think to be like the best builders. It's a father and son duo that are just been like really great. And I met with them and we talked about my situation, and they were like, we want to get this done for you. We're honored to like be able to build this for you. And I was just we've had a great communication. For the most part, I will say there's a couple things that I wish we had better communication on, but as far as like where the project was heading, I think that was really helpful. That we did keep those open lines of communication. So
Well,
shout out to Daryl and Kyle, because they
and to be at the end of a build and be like, I have a couple pieces of feedback, but overall I love them, is like not what I normally hear at the end of a build.
I would work with them again. And now that I know especially what to expect, I definitely, and that, and up there too, just even like cell phone services doesn't, so I would hear from them in the mornings, and then maybe on their lunch break they would reach back out with a question, but you couldn't really always get like a ton of service where they're working. But
yeah. Well, that's one reason I wanted to talk to you, because I feel like a lot of the folks that we talk to have been hosting for 3, 4, 5 years. And while we talk about the build, it is different when you're far out from the build. And I think that's a beautiful thing about the human spirit. We're very resilient. So if you talk to someone 3 years after a build, they're going to be more apt to remember the good things and like, but you are like fresh off of the build. You literally closed last week when we were talking and finished the build. So I want to go back to the build process and ask you about several phases along the way. And it's even better because it is just you. So you literally were involved in every part of this. So let's start with finding land and selecting a design. Is that where you started? Did you pick a design first or the land?
I picked I don't know. I think it was almost like the same trip. Like my friends and I. So my friends, I told you, I have like two friends that I travel with. So there's 3 of us, and we go one summer, one winter trip, and we were up there. And we always like to have our own rooms. So I kind of knew, I was like, okay, if I'm going to be able to use this for my friends, like I at least wanted to have a 3-bedroom.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a struggle because with an A-frame, I found like, these smaller places that were maybe 1, 2 bedrooms, but I really wanted a 3-bedroom just because of what my own needs were.
Mm-hmm.
And actually my former boss like just sent me this link on Instagram to this house and was like, check these out. And it was this company, Sukasa Shops is like the company. They're a Canadian company, and they had just released their A-frames like the week that she had found it. So she sent me the plan, and then I think I took that. I think I got that first, and then I was up in this area and met with a realtor and was looking at pieces of land. And that's when then I met with the builder on that same trip because she connected me with the builder. It was the same trip or the trip right after. And I was like, will this work on this land? And I got there. I got them to look at the land before I actually purchased it to make sure that this house could be built on there. I will say the house is a little bit bigger than the actual land that I first bought. So I ended up reaching out to the owners that own the piece of land next to it, because they are pretty small plots up there. And I just asked them and they ended up selling it to me, which was really nice too, because the house got a little bit big than I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you add any bedrooms, or just the 3-bedroom ended up being bigger?
3 bedrooms, 2 baths. And I think what just makes it look so much bigger is like there's 32-foot ceilings. It's and it just was the lots up there are only about like less than half an acre. So when you put that, plus I wanted a hot tub area, plus I want this. Of course. I ended up just making that, and they were lucky. I was lucky that they were willing to sell to me right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You kind of just like glossed over the finding a builder, like, and the builder came up. But that I feel like I've learned, I also can't speak to this because my cousin was my builder. So I went to one builder, he said yes. And I was like, great. And had a really positive experience. But a lot of folks, that's not the case. How did you go about finding that builder? Was it through your realtor?
It was. My realtor recommended them to me, and I called them, and we met. They came over to the cabin I was staying at. I explained to them, that I was diagnosed. I have this situation. I want to make this happen. And they were like, I just got a great vibe from them to begin with. And maybe I should have done more research, but I really didn't. I just was like, let's do it. And I always like laugh because I think I showed you this too, but I have it right here. But this is like the contract they gave me, which can't really see, but it's just like a carbon
One page.
copy. One page. It's like, we're going to build you a house. We're going to do this, this, and this. And here's the price. And I didn't think the bank would even accept it, but they did. But yeah, I did not shop around. I wanted to go with someone. My realtor is kind of like the realtor out in that area. So I wanted somebody that at least had some reputation and were solid individuals. And I remember they even told me, they're like, we can provide you references, but honestly, if you just go to the corner store, because there's only one like in the town, and just say our names, like people will also be able to speak to what we can do. So yeah.
Life.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, maybe that was blind faith that I was going off of, but I definitely did not explore another option. I was like, let's do it.
Well, the reality is in rural areas too, is that there aren't that many options. And so it's like if you find someone that came recommended and you felt good about them, I think that's the most important part because people underestimate how much time you spend talking and working with your builder throughout a year-long process. And so you having a good vibe about them is maybe the most important thing.
And I didn't know, again, this was COVID times. I didn't know who would be available when. And I was like, again, I didn't want to wait on getting it done. So
question about the price that you're talking about on that one sheet piece of paper that they gave you, because I think this is a common question that I wonder about too, of like how builders price it out, because so much can change during the build in terms of cost. So did they give you a flat price at the beginning and then they just said we will commit to that?
They gave me a flat price at the beginning, but there was no like, we'll commit to that. So they gave me a flat price, and then I was like, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about how you got to this number? So they literally just sent me like two like handwritten sheets of paper that had like flooring will be this much, this will be this much. But really, like as we went along the process, I picked out everything, and I just said, does this work? Does this work? I ended up over budget. I mean, I don't know anyone who's doing a build that would not end up over budget.
Nope.
It definitely ended up over budget. And there were a couple of things I will say. This is like what my feedback to them was. There were a couple of things that was like, yep, we'll do. And then it was like later on, I found out that actually cost more money. And I was like, oh, well, if you had told me that, I might have thought about that differently. Or like I don't know that I really would have. I mean, I don't think I went crazy on anything per se, but I like would have maybe thought about things a little differently in the grand scheme of things. There were a couple times when I was just like, do I do this? Do I not? And but yeah, so there were adjustments along the way. But I would say for the most part, they stuck to what we were agreed upon. But that's something I would know for next time too.
Yeah. Any sacrifices that you made? I feel like this is a really tough one that I found during my build, where it's like you are trying to like match the budget, but also you're building your, like in your case, like you're one of a lifetime dream cabin. You don't really want to make those sacrifices. Were there any that you did end up making?
I will say, I wouldn't say necessarily a sacrifice, but I don't love the lighting. And that's something I would have paid more attention to, because by the time, we talked about it with the electrician when there were no walls, no anything. And it was like, we're going to put one here, 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 here. And I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. And then when I actually saw it and how it all came together and the lights they use, but by that time they're already in. Because I wasn't, on site, I'm 2 hours away. So I would go up there occasionally, like, to meet, but, yeah, I wasn't there like watching everything that was happening, which I think added a layer of complexity. And then by the time we got around to it, it was like, well, we can redo it, but it's going to cost you, another like $5,000. And I was like, it's fine. I will learn to like them.
I know.
So I wouldn't say sacrifices. I pretty much did what I set out to do. I'm trying to think if there was anything. And even like the hot tub area, which was an add-on, but I had them build like a deck around it. So it's like inset.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going for it. And
Yeah.
now I don't want to come across like I had unlimited funding here, but I sold a house in DC. I moved into an apartment. Like I had, like, there were resources that I had available that I was able to, make things happen, and still have a loan from the bank.
Yeah.
So I
So
definitely
when
do have a loan.
was your intention when you sold your house in DC and put all that money into this and started renting an apartment, was your intention that you would move here full time?
I I think my intention was I'll live there part time and rent it out part time, and then still have a place. The reason I sold my house in DC was it was just like a bigger house than I frankly needed. All my money was tied up into that one house. And then I was like, for the amount I'm paying for a one house in DC, I could have like two houses or two dwellings, other places. And as I mentioned to you, one of our cabin consults, I just don't feel like I'm meant to be in one location. I just feel like
Yeah.
I like to have the flexibility, and that's just who I am as a person. And so being able to have those multiple options, and also because when I was first diagnosed with cancer in 2016, I was living in Virginia, so all my doctors were in Virginia, and then living in Northeast DC and trying to get to them was really challenging. It was like an hour and a half, like and I was
Yeah.
going so frequently that I was like, this is not sustainable. This is not. And at that time, housing prices were still pretty high. I was like, now seems like a good time to maybe cash out on this deal. So I met some really amazing neighbors there that I am so thankful that I moved over there. But it was time to go and had to come up this way.
Yeah. So is your apartment closer to all the medical care in Virginia? Yeah. Okay. So you
Yeah,
saved yourself that drive. DC traffic is no joke. I do not blame you at all.
no joke. It is terrible, and I just couldn't do it. So
Yep.
yes.
I don't blame you. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the design of the cabin, especially if you knew you were going to rent this a little bit. Did you have any design inspiration? What was your vision going in for? And I think some of this relates to the build. Some of it is obviously furnishings and decor, but even just design decisions in the build of what materials you use for countertops, for flooring. I think the
Mhm.
piece goes missed that I luckily hired our interior designer at the very start of the build process so that she could help me with things like lighting fixtures and countertop materials and things like that, along with ordering furnishings way in advance because it was taking so long to get them. But a lot of folks will wait till the build's almost over and then hire them just for like paint colors and curtains. How did you approach the design process?
Yeah, I remember when before getting to get to this price that my builders gave me, I like put together these like documents of like, this is what I think I want here. This is what I think I want here. I actually haven't pulled those out to see how much of that actually happened because things changed over time for sure. I did hire a designer as well that helped me. Her Summer Led Designs. I think it's cool to give them a shout out. They focus on short-term rentals. Jordan was awesome through the process, and a lot of the things I like to say that we partnered because I did pick out a number of the things and then I would run them by her and was like, hey, what do you think about this? Will this work? And she'd be like, maybe try this or do this. So I do think it was more, I had a vision in my head, but she really helped me kind of like bring that to life when she realized what I was looking to do. So I will say through the whole thing, I think I only made one change of I had this orange color I wanted in the bathroom downstairs. I was like, yes, yes, yes. And when I did it, I walked in, I was like, no, 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 no. So they did change that, which I was like, and they're like, well, maybe when the vanity's in, I said no, like let's change this
I
now.
know right now this is not going
There's
to
no
do.
world I'm gonna like this. Yeah. So we changed that. But I will say everything else, I picked out a couple of the rooms have a wallpaper and and so I picked those things out and then Jordan put together like the paint that would go with the wallpaper or the light fixtures that might look good with this and like the tile and things like that. And I knew I wanted green cabinets. I think you and I have discussed that. I knew I wanted those, like they're pretty popular, like the sage, forest green
For a
cabinets.
reason, they're
Yeah, I know.
popular.
Yes. And then I did hem and haw about the countertops, what color I was going to do those for a while, but settled on white. So we'll see if I ever
Okay, I
get
was just going to ask
yeah.
because Julie, I am on your Instagram right now while we're talking, and the outside is beautiful, but I am dying to see photos of the inside of the
I know.
space.
I know. That is one thing I am not great at is the social media aspect, which I am hoping to get a lot better at. And I'm trying to decide like, do I share it now while it's just photos I'm taking, or do I wait to get because I do have some professional.
Share. You're not going to scare anyone off with bad photos. I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but I feel like anyone who's already following, you're not going to lose followers because you share a photo that you took. You might not grow as quickly as you would with the professional photos, but that will come once you get the professional photos taken, But meanwhile, the 963 people who are following you are anxiously awaiting to see the interior.
I know. I would do. Okay. I have some. I will update it. Yeah.
Not to put pressure on you literally the week that you're having surgery, but if you have any downtime, we're just over here waiting first and foremost to find out if you're doing okay afterwards. And secondly, to see some photos of the cabin.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah. I'll put that on my list.
Okay. Remind me the name of the designer again. You said Summerled. Is that like summer this season?
It's SOMERLED Designs, I believe.
Okay. Because I like what you're saying about, I always think it's really important when you hire a designer that like you still get to be a really active participant. Because for me, I have a strong eye for what I like. My biggest weakness is being able to bring a whole room together, like paint plus rug plus curtains plus couch plus pillows plus throw blanket is like a whole lot of things to all coordinate. And I cannot be trusted to put them all together. So having someone who can be like, oh, I like this rocking chair you picked out. Now let's design around that. And it sounds like that's what the process was like for you.
It was because, and they were actually the second designer that I was like looking at. The first one we didn't connect as well. So this was my second one with that. And they came to me with like 3 different concepts and was like, they were all very different, all very cabiny, woodsy, and they were like, well, just tell us, do any of these resonate with you? And one of them totally did. I was like, that is what I'm looking for. I haven't been able to like put it into a picture. And from that, it was just, and then from there, and then my problem is too, and I want to do so many things. So channeling it into like what would be a cohesive, look for the entire house was where I struggle. So that's where, and even like I came up and found some cool things on Etsy that, Jordan was like really receptive to me, like bringing them into the design. And she was just really supportive and wasn't like, no, that's not what we do. Or no, that's not going to be, because they do a lot of short-term rentals and have a look. But I definitely wanted some key pieces in there that would be different from, some of the other places I've seen them work on. So
Etsy is such a clutch place, I feel like, to shop, especially for lighting. Lighting is the one thing that like when I go to like Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever store you typically get lighting at, it's like nothing fits that unique. It makes such a difference in a room, both the light bulbs and the color temperature. As many people know, I have strong feelings about that, but also just the fixture and to be able to support small businesses and makers and have like these unique statement pieces. I don't know. I'm like a huge fan of Etsy.
Yeah, there's a chandelier that I haven't ordered it yet because I have to be there for when it's delivered, but that I'm really excited about. And
what does it look like?
It's like it's made out of twigs. So it's this like really big chandelier that has like it's all made from like natural materials and stuff like that. Amazing. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then I bought these because one of the rooms has this floral wallpaper, and I bought these dried flower bars on Etsy that just tie it in. And I'm like, that was like the first thing I put up. I didn't even have mattresses until yesterday, but I was like, these dried flower bars were there because they were super cool and I enjoyed them so much. So
I don't see any pictures of them on your Instagram. I don't know what you're talking about.
I think I could do a story actually about them, but I will, I will get better.
I just love now that I'm done with the build. This is like the fun stuff, and getting to follow along on other people's builds and seeing the choices that they made is really fun. To like live vicariously. I enjoyed it.
One of the things that I'm really excited about is there was this I had the plans called for a built-in fireplace, but I did a freestanding, so it actually gave me like 2 more feet of room, which they pushed the wall back out, which was really nice. And then it left this kind of cubby area. And I was going to do storage with it. And then my builder and I were talking, and I was like, well, what else could we do with it? And so I made it into this really cute dog house for my dog.
Stop.
That I'm really excited to like, I have like a design for how I'm going to decorate it inside and like, make it like a little living room for him. I don't know if he'll ever, he's 14 now, but he does love a good dog bed. So I'm like, maybe if I
put the right bed in there,
yeah, he will. But if nothing else, it's adorable. And it's like a little, I got my dog's name is Harley. So it says like Harley's
Oh
hideout.
my
And
God.
it's like, yeah. So anyway,
What
that's
kind of
it.
dog?
He's a mutt. He is I don't know, if you look at him, he looks like a large corgi. But I did a DNA test on him. It came back cattle dog and chow. But he
Oh,
looks very much like a corgi. So
such a soft spot for chows. I used to have a
yes.
chow
Oh,
mix.
really?
Yeah, they're the
Yeah.
best. Not to everyone else, but to their owners,
Sure. Yeah.
they're the best.
Oh,
Um,
that's him too. So that might be true. Yeah.
yeah, they're very loyal, but they're also guard
Mhm.
dogs. Mine chased an intruder. My house where I used to live got broken into a couple times, and one of them, he was like on it's almost a second floor window. It's a one-story house, but then it goes down on the side, and there's like a crawl space underneath it. And someone tried to break in that side window, and we came home to find a broken window, um, but no evidence of theft. And Toby was suddenly outside. No blood on him. There was blood on the window. And so the only takeaway we have from that is that the intruder tried to get in and Toby just flipped his shit and was like, hell no, you're not getting in this house.
Right.
Chased him and literally jumped out the window to make sure he left. And I was like, the,
Yeah.
the beauty of a chow.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so now talk to me about this house was built for you, but you are thinking about hosting it. What have you had to do? Have you traveled Airbnb a lot? Like, have you thought about hosting in the past, or is this all like very new?
Yeah, no, so I currently work for a nonprofit, but before that, I actually worked for luxury hotels for like 15 years. So,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. So in multiple cities too. So that was kind of my background. I actually have my degree is like business and hospitality. And so when I was younger, I thought like, oh, I'm gonna do a bed and breakfast someday. And that just seemed like a really big commitment because I also like to travel and, so I was like, well, this is kind of hosting, but not the strong commitment of having to be there constantly. So yeah, I think I will probably, yeah, I think I'll host eventually. We'll see. Like I said, I might love it so much that I don't know. We'll see. I'm hoping that yes, I will, at least for the times when I'm gone and traveling and things like that. And but my work is fully remote, so I can work from out there as well, which is nice too. So
okay. Talk to me a little bit from your background of studying hospitality and working for high-end hotels. What do you think that Airbnb hosts, which is a much different scale, but what do we have to learn from that industry? What are some things that you would want to tell every Airbnb host based on what you know from that work?
sure. Um, that like the guest experience really matters, right? It's not just about the making the money. I don't know. It is about making money too, if that's what you're in it for. But I'm like even just like the personal touches. So I like worked for, the Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons hotel companies. So we were so focused on like really customizing guest experiences. Now, I don't think I'm going to be doing a ton of like planning activities for them, but like if I learn that somebody's coming for a special occasion, like I'll definitely be, adding something that from what I hear from them into, an amenity for them or something like that. I just think I like to look around and see like how a space functions, and that's I think what hotels do a really good job at. Like how if you come in, are you going to do this, how does this work, like where's the luggage rack, where's the this, where's that.
Yeah.
I will say I want to definitely have like super high cleaning standards. I think that hotels, they do the best they can, but I want to supersede what might happen even in a luxury hotel. I'm not going to go
Yeah.
into details, but making sure that and then just really like listening. I think listening to your guests, like really just knowing why they're there and customizing things as much as you can goes a long way. And again, I haven't done the hosting yet, so I'm not sure how much of the time that will like I will be able to do that in addition to having a full-time job and doing all those things. But I'm not looking at Airbnb as like passive. I'm just
Mhm.
not like that's not who I will be as a host, and that's not who I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and when you have one property versus with large hotels, obviously they have huge staffs, but even thinking about cleaning, the level of turnover, you
Sure.
are able to give a little bit more attention when it's one property and it's just yours. I think the biggest question I often think about is like, because what you were saying of like really understand the guest experience, I think a good smart thing to do before you launch for anybody is to like go there and visit it as if you were a guest and figure out like if you realize that you don't have a place to put your suitcase or unpack your clothes, like okay, that might be something. Sometimes we're so in it though that having friends or family
Yeah.
go and do that for us. But after that initial launch, I struggle to get feedback. Like nobody wants to be occasionally, I will say occasionally guests in the private feedback will be like, hey, this didn't impact our experience, but we'd love more hooks to hang our clothes on or things like that. How have you at either the large hotels or how have you thought about that with this one? Do you have any advice for how people can get honest feedback from people who are like really kind and just don't want to hurt your feelings? But feedback is actually like an incredible tool for improving that guest experience every stay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I guess, I will say in the hotel business, people were not afraid, especially luxury hotels that
Yeah,
pay that much money. We got a lot of feedback. So
that's
that
true.
was never a issue from that. I do think, I do use Airbnb. I don't think I answered that before, but yeah, so I use Airbnb quite frequently, or at least like I would say like maybe 10 times a year. I don't know if that's as
Yeah,
frequently,
that's
but like
frequently.
probably, yeah, I would probably say that that's kind of I prefer it. I think it's fun and can find cool places and just like to have more space than, um, you know, so I'm not afraid to give the feedback. I don't put it out there in the review. I will give like
Yeah.
5. I think I gave 1 4-star just because they were just should not have been listing this place, and I was like, oh, I can't. But
Sometimes 4-star or less is warranted. I will never
yeah,
give that to someone who I feel like is trying their best ever. It's
right,
5 stars and private feedback, but there are hosts out there who are not trying their best and do think
yeah,
that it's just passive income. And I don't hesitate to give an honest review for those.
totally. Um, so I don't know. I guess I didn't really think of that as being like a potential issue that people aren't going to want to give feedback. I know that am going to probably do like a soft rental or soft launch for my friends and family, and I know that they will give me feedback.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah. So we'll see from there. But
The reality is like most feedback isn't personal. I don't take it personally if you tell me
yeah,
you want more clothes hooks in the bedroom or you found an ant. Great. That's feedback for me to provide to my pest control company and be like, "Hey, I know you're servicing it quarterly, but we're still seeing ants. What else can be done?" Right? But when you're
right.
not right there, it's really hard to address those things if you don't know. So guests become your eyes and ears on the ground and your cleaner obviously. And so that feedback can just be so valuable.
Yeah. I think also just like, not taking it personally. It's not a reflection. And just, I don't know, because I'm an HR person at my job, and I'm always like, there's feedback that happens, and it's like, this is an opportunity to do better, or it's just like an opportunity to know what's going on. I don't look at it as like, I don't get defensive. I'm not like, oh God,
Right.
you're attacking this. It's like, this is what it is. And how can I do better?
Yeah.
I do wonder if because I feel like so, I don't know, I'm also hypercritical. I was just talking to my friend about this too, that I'm like, the lights to me still bother me every time I'm in there. And I'm like, I eventually have to let that go. But I brought like 3 friends up there that are like, I don't know what you're talking about. This looks great. Like, so I wonder if given feedback, I will become a little bit more defensive only because this is
Mm,
like, I've spent like the year and a half, like really focusing on what I think, or the other day I noticed like when we did the outlets, we didn't put like USB chargers in them. I'm like, damn, I should have done that. And like, those were kind
you
of
can
things
swap those out real easily though.
that's what I was like. I was like, I'm sure there's got to be a fix for this that I can
Yeah.
do. But like, stuff like that I like. And this is what I will say to somebody who is thinking about doing this. Like, there is no perfect build, even a custom build, even when you have like strong finances. Like, there is no perfect. There was always going to be something. Just like the house. This house that was supposed to face a certain way, and just because they were doing the land, they ran into rock. And so now the house faces a different way. That it was like either we can spend like $30,000 to blast this rock out of here, or we can just like angle it this way as opposed to this way. And at some point, you just have to be okay with things and realize that even though the best laid plans don't always happen the way you think they're going to happen.
That's right. It's like you read my mind because my next question was going to be like, you are so close to the build process and we often forget these things, but what advice would you have given yourself at the start of the build that you can offer to others who haven't yet started?
Yeah, that was one of them, that there is no perfect house. There's always going to be something, and don't put that pressure on yourself. I have. And it's been really stressful for me that I'm like, this has got to be this way. And only now at the end, I'm like, there are going to be things that I know I'm going to change out eventually, or that I'm going to maybe want to look at differently once I get in there. But that would be my advice. It's always going to be more time and money. I'm sure that's probably no surprise, but that's another piece. So just factor that in.
Yep.
And to the extent that you can, I would say like try to enjoy it. Like, I know it can be stressful, and but also just try to like really remember the time. When I look back at old pictures now, even though I haven't posted them, but I look back at old photos and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when it only had this or when it did that. And so I think those are like my big things. And then just I think I had a good time with it overall.
Yeah. You said to me just the other day that you're going to miss the build process now that it's over, which
I think
might sound crazy.
Yeah. I've been like looking at other designs and I'm like, okay, I can't do that. I have to get this up and running and see how it does and all of that. But I think at some point, and like, I think it's fun. It's cool. It's like, I don't know, something new for me. I did not have any experience in this world.
In the build part. Obviously, you were a hospitality expert,
right.
It turns out, which I did not know about you.
Yeah. But I don't know, it's been 8 years since I've been in my current role. So that was when I left the hotel business. But yeah.
I think what I love most about your build is that you are truly doing it for yourself first and foremost. And that's even evident by the fact that like I'm giving you a hard time about the pictures because I want to see what it looks like. But the fact that you go back and look at the pictures and you haven't posted them on Instagram, right? And there's so many cabins out there. And I'm not saying that I haven't done this at times too, where I get pictures back and rather than sit there and enjoy them, I'm immediately like, which one am I going to post tomorrow? Which one am I going to post after that? Right. And like, it is easy in this world of Instagram and Dwell and Pinterest to be quick to build for other people, whether it's through pictures or whatever, sharing that experience with others. And yours really seems to be, driven by like such big life events, truly seems to be yours first and foremost. And I love that.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's true. Although I did end up putting a bathtub upstairs and I don't even know why. I don't enjoy bathtubs personally. And so somebody had mentioned it to me and I ended up doing it. And now I'm kind of like, and it cost me more money. And then that was like the last thing to get finished to finish the build. And it was this missing tub drain that actually wasn't missing. Whole story, but it held up things by like 3.5 weeks. And I was like, why did I put this stupid tub? I'm like, who even said that to me? And my friend the other day was like, it was me. And I was like, well, whatever. But it looks great. I'm glad I have it. But that was like the one thing that I think I did for somebody else. But yeah, the rest of it has definitely been for me. And I'm excited to invite friends up and enjoy it and to like eventually then welcome, new friends, aka Airbnb guests, strangers into it, to enjoy it as well. So
yeah. Well, we'll be thinking of you and wishing you all the best. And go check her out on Instagram because there's about to be a whole bunch of new pictures up there of the finished A-frame. It's good to talk to you.
Yeah, you too. All right.
Bye. Thanks so much for joining us. And if you liked what you heard, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or share some of your favorite parts over on Apple Podcasts. We also have been loving when you share your favorite episodes on your Instagram stories. Not only is it a delight for us to see, but it also helps new people to find and join the conversation. If you have feedback or suggestions for the future, you can find us on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin and The Chalet Frame, spelled The Chalet, CHALA Frame. Looking forward to next week.